I'm here with Derek Barrows, the founder of Belay On. How's it going, man?
Very well. How are you today?
I'm good, man. I feel we already started, so I feel like we've got the pleasantries out of the way.
I saw you last night, so
I know. We might as well dig into how we know each other, right? So we were talking off camera, like how we actually got to meet, but it was through our wives. We don't even know how our wives got to be friends, but isn't that at our age, middle-aged guys, like we're usually friends with the husbands of our wives' friends?
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
It's like, okay, he seems pretty cool, but maybe I'll get his number one day. Maybe I won't.
Yeah, like how do you broach that? What was that movie where it's like, how do you make a friend when you're 40? Like it's not like you're a kid where you just go up and like, hey, my name's Spencer. What's your name? Yeah.
Like I'll tell my wife, like, I got his number today.
Yeah. I think he likes me.
Yeah, I think we should hang out. But no, we got lucky enough to connect. Our wives get along, and then our daughters play cheerleading.
Right? Cheerleading, yeah.
Cheerleading, soccer. You were the coach for a couple years. It's been a good experience in watching the kids kind of grow, and also our careers kind of in parallel. Seeing you do the podcast and stuff, and us starting our own business now is,
Well, it's a lot of fun, and that's obviously why we're here today. We're going to talk about Belay On, and I want to spend some time not only in talking about the name, because I think we were having that conversation beforehand, and it's a really interesting story to tell, like what is the origin of a name. And Derek, why don't we talk about what we will cover today, and then we'll go into your background. So what is Belay On, and what is it that you guys specifically do?
So the technical title is Belay On Autism Services, and we provide hourly ABA therapy to kids with a diagnosis of autism.
Yeah, and I remember you were telling me when we were doing our brainstorming session beforehand and questions and stuff, because I don't understand your space, which is why it's really fascinating for me to have this conversation. But where you were saying it's really important to kind of specify or designate has a diagnosis of X, doesn't have autism.
Right, correct. I mean, really, you're diagnosed with something to help you treat it, right? You're not something. You're not this. It's not your badge forever. It's something to help us and help the medical world treat your symptoms the best, right? So you don't have autism. You've been diagnosed with this, and then how you treat that in the spectrum nowadays is just so broad, right? And depending where you land on that, you might not even be on the autism spectrum, right? I wasn't diagnosed with autism, but I had dyslexia. I had ADHD, right? I was that kid running around, but if you don't have all of it, you don't fall into one bucket, right? Down syndrome, trisomy 21. It's also another diagnosis that could be really good in these therapies. Unfortunately, the insurance providers are not on board with that yet. But this more hourly, longer hours with these patients, instead of come in for 30 minutes or an hour and then go home, you're spending 2 to 8 hours a day, and you can work through some of the things that they're dealing with in more of a controlled setting with play-based therapy. Yeah,
and that's so play-based therapy. I think I would like to know if we go back a moment for you, so understanding you mentioned you grew up ADHD and dyslexic. I'd like to hear a little bit more of your background, and I don't want to skip over the fact that you were a professional baseball player for a number of years as well, which shapes who you are. But could you give us some of your background growing up in Florida and life as a kid? And then I think it might lay the foundation for why you're doing the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, me as a kid, again, very functional, right? Had whatever those diagnoses are, might not be severe, might not, but there's a spectrum for pretty much everyone. Grew up in Sarasota, Florida. My family, a divorced family, that just helps with some of me sneaking around. I can play games and stuff, and when you kind of grow up, you can, it gives you some freedoms that you don't really need or want, right? It doesn't really help the scenario. So again, another thing where therapy can pull that in, right? You're learning without the social situations affecting what the child's going through, right? Because when you're bouncing around homes, you can be do whatever you want. Great childhood growing up. My parents had a small business. My mom cleaned houses. She'd bring me along with her, and I'd watch her clean big houses. My dad had 2 small ice cream stores that kind of whittled away into the crash of 2008. Fun there. So I got to watch a lot of different things. But growing up in multiple homes, like I've had 4 fathers growing up, right?
Okay. Yep.
So my life has been kind of all over the place. So finding tools to rein that in has been a lifelong goal of mine. And early intervention into ABA therapy really would help those tools at a younger age. So if I could have learned without making mistakes as I got older, if I could have had the early intervention, had find ways to learn to control what I was going on minus my outside surroundings, because life happens. You cannot stop life, right?
Well, I was going to say that's interesting, and I hear it come up quite a bit on this show when I'm talking to founders of companies, and kind of like what made you do what you want to do, or how did you gravitate towards this thing? And it sounds like, whether consciously or subconsciously, as you're kind of retrospective of your life and your childhood, and maybe some non-traditional upbringing to a degree, and then you're kind of digging into, well, I had a diagnosis of ADHD.
Well, I grew up in therapy.
Yeah. So
I grew up going to therapists.
Right. So you're almost, like I was saying though, like it seems as if you were somewhat solving for your own problem.
Right.
Yeah.
This therapy, and again, without the diagnosis of autism, you're looking at cash, right? Either way, a delivery model has to be delivered. But for me, I believe if I would have had longer with the therapist, more of this play-based, how do you handle learning? Not, hey, let me teach you something. How do you handle transitions? For the people that have kids, when your daughter goes from watching a great show on television they like to doing math homework, there's an upsetness there.
Yep.
Now, how you handle that transition is really important on how they deliver, care. That transition on learning how to learn the behavior that you're frustrated with is everything to me. And for me, I believe that if it would have helped me, it would help anyone. And again,
do you think baseball, just out of curiosity, baseball served as that play-based therapy for you, that outlet?
Yeah, absolutely. Sport was huge for me. And, I played baseball. I very successful, but didn't make it to where I wanted to go. Yeah. I played every position professionally, and none of them well enough to get to the major leagues, right? You see Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs last year. That wasn't me, right? I was that other guy begging to be there, did some good things, but didn't make it. But it was my therapy. It was my blank canvas, as you will. But you even see adults control that, right? Like, people get in the way of that. And sometimes before you learn yourself, and until you learn yourself, the influence of others can be, I think, drastic.
Totally. You and I have had these conversations at length, right? When we're watching soccer, our daughter, 4 or 5 at the time, now they're going on 6, but like, how much structure should be involved in a 4 or 5-year-old's sport? Or should it just really truly be about fun and play and socialization and things like that? And really the soccer and the strategy and the technique is almost secondary, because they're just little developing humans right now.
Correct.
I think you and I share the same sentiment that you don't want to apply too much pressure to them or too much order in that chaos. I mean, some of the best players in the world, soccer just being the sport I know, are the kids that grew up in the streets of Brazil and played unstructured soccer for 8 hours a day with no shoes, but their love and creativity for the game was born out of that. But we, like in the United States, to apply a lot of structure and a lot of formula to things, and again, it can go too far.
Is that the adults?
Yeah, is it
or
the adults?
Is it the children? Right. So you get into this. Well, we're controlling this, and in the middle is the behavioral response from the child. Yeah. Right. And a lot of the measurement in ABA is how did they handle that, positive or negative? How did they handle this transition or this event, right? And where did they handle that? And honestly, baseball, I didn't grow up saying I want to start an ABA company. That wasn't, that wasn't my goal going through it. But I always found it fascinating to see how people handle sport, right? Aaron Judge, it's great, home run, 62, breaks an American League record. I want to know how he felt struggling up into it when he was, you know what I mean? And then what about the next game? Right? What about the other things that go along with it? I loved watching kids struggle and then succeed. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Watching them make those little changes, like your daughter last night scored her first goal.
First goal in a long time. I don't think first ever, but it was definitely like, we were like, whoa, she scored.
Such a great moment, right? And someone else is scoring 5 every game, but watching somebody go through and finally succeed or you can see that child.
Well, we use the term it clicks, right? Something clicks into place, and it's not a specific event. It's not like, we did these 17 steps to get this thing to click. It's like at some point, kids just click. They click at their different pace, right? There's not necessarily a linear path for growth, but they at some point click.
But in our minds, there is.
In our minds, by this age, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. And in reality, everybody has a different path. But so bringing me to present day, Derek, I know you've had a history of working kind of in the healthcare sector prior to Belay On. So how did you enter into the realm that we would call the healthcare world?
Sure. So I played professional sport until 2010. I went back to college, got my degree Finished that. I was a Division I strength coach. The guy's now the head coach of strength coach for the Phoenix Suns. So I got some perspective on, development through childhood, right? And a lot of philosophies on that. And we continue to talk to this day. But I went back, sold real estate, was working some other jobs, wanted to get into coaching. And they were like, well, you need to volunteer. I'm like, I had done volunteering for too long, living in my car, homeless as a minor league player, making $800 to $1,500 a month. It was just, I never made it to the big leagues, never got that big bonus. It was time. Family started getting sick. My mom had some real big issues. My other mom had some issues, and my dad's, declined drastically through Alzheimer's and dementia. And I had an opportunity to go to Texas, move to San Antonio, and start at a medical company called Epic Health Services.
Okay.
It was around $150 million, and we grew that business. And I started on in one role, and by the end of it, we were a $1 billion company that sold to Bain Capital. I went from outside sales rep role to an operations role within that organization. We went from $150 million to $1 billion, sold to Bain Capital. Bain Capital also purchased a company called PSA.
Okay.
Merged them two together. Our leadership group, even though larger, we did the whole business school reverse merger. That let's do the fantasy business model. A small entity took over the larger entity, became the regional vice president of sales. Had 13 different states. I think I had more than that, but who knows how long do we have? I had 70 people directly to me on the sales team. A great leadership group. A guy named Nathan Hoffman was fantastic at leading. Another guy named Alex Jameson. Some great people were really helping mentor me through.
Yeah. It sounds like you were in lots of sales roles, but were you it sounds like you had
so
operational background.
We're still going.
Yeah.
Right?
No. Sorry, man. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So a great operator. I worked with a guy named Nathan Capehart. He unfortunately had some stuff going on with his father. Was honestly trach invented, and he had to step away from the job. Yeah. At the same time, my wife got cancer. My dad was passing away, and he ended up dying. In that year, I did all of it. So I was the interim president of operations because he left and exited the company. I took on that whole Texas region, over $450 million, I think at the time, 5,000 employees underneath us. I had the area vice presidents were rolling up to me, had some help with the leadership, but I sat in that interim role until 2020 in the beginning, right before the beginning of COVID. We were going to acquire a company called Maxim Healthcare, and the FTC didn't clear it to close.
Okay.
So it didn't clear to close. I was in a dual role. We needed to make some moves as an organization, and to be honest, I would have removed myself as well. So they cut off that appendix, which was me. They did the right thing. Hey, sign this stuff, and good luck. Yeah. But when you drop over $50 million to the bottom line, you know what I mean? Like, you're so close. The best thing about it was I got to drive this $450 million car.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. I was this failed baseball player that got the opportunity to sit in this seat for a little bit. And it felt like one of those college coaches. I loved the opportunity. I thanked them for what they did. They treated me right. Mm-hmm. I wish I could have gone farther, but I got to the top of something large into a regional experience, and I couldn't have.
Well, and you got to where you needed to be, right? Like in that path, right? Nobody can predict exactly what our career path is going to look like, but I imagine all of that was laying the foundation for being prepared to what you do today. And so I want to spend now. Let's pivot over into Belay On. Let's transition. We've been talking about transition earlier. So Belay On, we've been touching on it here and there, but why don't we take a step back and go, what exactly is Belay On? And then I'd like to hear the origin story of the name as well. This podcast is brought to you by True Captive Insurance, a premier medical stop-loss captive for employer groups ranging from 25 to 1,000 employees. True Captive believes in healthcare that is personal and insurance that isn't complicated. That's why they take a white glove approach, making it easy for employer groups to transition into a program built specifically for them. Check them out at truecaptive.com.
Yeah, sure. So Belay On is an organization, or the name? You want to know the name?
We'll start with the name.
Okay, so the name. So back in Sarasota, Florida, I worked at the YMCA for years, and I taught a ropes class there. So I was teaching people to tie ropes, climb these, apparatuses and stuff. And the commands in climbing are, for the person climbing, the first thing they say is on belay. When they're all, everything's secure and they're ready to climb, they say on belay. And the person holding the rope securely, when they have everything tied on their own, they're holding the rope, says belay on. It's the command to say, go ahead and start climbing, right? And when I thought of what we wanted to do, first I gave myself a deadline to start a company, and I got right up to the deadline. It was like, you're doing something, and it just all came to me at once. Like, it literally, I got to get this done. It was like midnight in a random night, Friday night. And I was like, I love this name. I got there.
It's cool.
But really, we're supporting the journey not only for the patient, right? It's also for the family, right? Because we bring them in and we talk through what they're doing. And it also is a journey for the clinicians, right? These clinicians truly bring everything to the table, and they're spending all the time with these patients, right? And in ABA therapy in the world right now, it's a lot going on, a lot of movement, a lot of entities, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of changes, right? A lot of payer situations, a lot of things that they want to treat patients, but they're always hit with all this operational stuff and expensive things and lack of clarity, and the payers aren't the clearest, right? Fee for service, a lot going on with it, where the entity itself should be there for not just the patients, but for all the people in that circle of care that's being provided to the patient.
Yeah, and I like the idea. I was thinking kind of the connotation of what that means, and you said it pretty well. The supporting, right? Like it's the support around you. If I'm the one holding the rope and my partner, my climbing partner's up there, my job, your life kind of is in my hands, right? So it's not just, hey, I'm doing this for you. There's a partnership, because as you're going, you're relinquishing some of the rope and making sure there's enough slack. And I like the visual connotation of that name. And I asked you earlier, I was like, is there an exclamation point on the end of it? Because I typed it that way, and you're like, no. And I'm like, well, I just thought it was exciting.
But there is an exclamation on the activity of it. So if you're climbing and I got your rope, it is Belay On.
It's Belay On.
You can finish almost every sentence with Belay On.
Belay On. Maybe rolls. We will. We'll do that for the rest of the podcast. So why don't we define, though, because I know this, you even were telling me over coffee the other day, like, hey, this can be kind of emotionally charged, especially for a parent as they hear, oh, my child has a diagnosis of autism. Yeah. Why don't we actually define what that means first, and then talk about some of the emotion I as a parent might go through once I have this diagnosis?
Well, it's tough to speak for something, right? We haven't got that diagnosis personally. Okay. But the biggest thing is really it's just a diagnosis to help you treat.
Okay.
Right? Like, your child isn't labeled forever, right? It should put you into bucket to find services that support the diagnosis. And it's important to understand the diagnosis, because it's important for the people working with those children to know that this is going on. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So you don't need to wear the label everywhere. You don't need to join your soccer team and be like, we have this, or we've been diagnosed with this. But it is emotional for a family to hear your child is diagnosed with this, because you're going to feel it as what did I do wrong? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
My experience
some self-reflection of it's my fault as a parent.
And with Epic and Aviana Healthcare, the two large entities that I had worked for, you're dealing with complex kids that are trach invented. Like, it's just a sad scenario, right? Okay. There's not a lot of room. And watching these families get this, they blame themselves sometimes, right? And they're trying to figure things out. And it's a rigid system where you need these diagnoses to get help. You need some of this stuff. Yeah. We couldn't help my dad with his Parkinson's, dementia, and Alzheimer's until he got an Alzheimer's diagnosis. Okay. So, some of it is just triggering insurance.
I see.
But really, you want to support what that's going on, and you're not alone.
And what are some of the things that, because I think we all have perceptions, and we've heard terms like on the spectrum, right? Or you've heard a term like Asperger's. But with this broader diagnosis of autism, what are some of the things that would fall under the umbrella as common characteristics or common issues?
Again, I'm not going to go down that as a non-clinician.
Okay, fair enough.
For anybody that's in that space, I am non-clinical, and I'm going to stay non-clinical.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But what I would say where it would have helped me is sometimes the decision making, it can get overwhelming, right? And slowing down and understanding the behavior that you're going through when you're given a task that you don't like or an emotional response. Understanding kind of that emotional response is you may have someone with the diagnosis move a little quicker into their own response instead of thinking it through. So you may see a reaction that's like, every time this happens, right? Or every time we go to the store, this happens, right? So part of what Belay On, what we're doing, and we don't have a clinic setting yet, we will, is we want to treat in the home. We want to treat in the community. We want to treat in a clinic. We want to treat where it's appropriate to the patient, because the patient might do great in this clinic setting and go there every day. Then get to the home and have complete, might not go well at all.
Right.
So if you don't get to the bottom line of the root of the responses, how are you supposed to help work with that? So the ability to treat in multiple places with these type of diagnoses is something that we're passionate about.
Well, you guys, so you're the type of therapy you do is, you say, was different than maybe the traditional style of therapy. It was what you were calling ABA, correct?
ABA therapy,
what does that acronym mean again? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Applied Behavioral Analysis.
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And the BCBAs are board certified behavioral analysts, and there's registered RBTs, which is registered behavioral technicians that also help support the therapy. They're really the day-to-day therapy.
And is this a newer style of therapy? A newer
No.
approach? Okay.
So if you Google ABA therapy, you're going to see some, negative stories, some positive stories. And what we're really trying to do, an old school way of doing it so you'll hear the terms restricted.
Okay.
Right. And for anybody listening online, let's not, you know what I mean? There's a lot of emotions behind it, because now you have 30-year-olds that went through some of it. And some of the treatment was restricted. Sit in your seat, do this, follow, or if they had mannerisms, it's controlling those mannerisms. They force them into this normalcy. Right.
Okay.
And some of the adults have come back and said, I felt forced. Right. Really, that's why you need the longer and the earlier you can work with the patients, early intervention, right? And the longer the treatments can go, you can work through those responses in an open environment versus a restricted environment. The more that you force them into, we got to get this done in an hour.
Yeah.
The diagnosis isn't hourly.
But it adds a layer of stress to it, doesn't it?
Which part?
If I've got to do it within an hour, right?
I think it can.
Yeah,
or you have to be in this center, and you have to do it here. You have to do this, and we need results, because if we don't have results, they're not going to approve it through insurance, right? So if you're not showing progress in any way, shape, or form, they may deny your next round of treatment. It's not just because you have the diagnosis, you get it forever. You have to show progress, right?
Oh, yeah, because, otherwise an insurance company might intervene and say, why are we continuing to pay for this?
We're doing
if
nothing.
It's not working, yeah. But what is it about kind of coming on site? So talk to me and maybe juxtapose a clinical setting versus, maybe we'll do it in the backyard, or maybe we'll come to the home. Why do you think that might have a more advantageous
triggers,
outcome?
right?
Yeah.
So you have children, right?
Yes.
You may see a different child on a soccer field versus, right? Now, we're not going to come out and do therapy while they're playing a soccer game. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just not what we do. And it really doesn't fit into our kids at the current state. But when you work with the patients long enough, you might start in a clinic setting, might go into the outdoor setting, you might go to the home setting. You start to find the best place to treat the patient. And that's why our clinician, she's great. Her name is Lissa Bonstetter, and she joined us after years of coming up through this. Division I, played college athletics, was a gymnast. She has her thoughts and development on how ABA can grow. Well, I want her to grow with it. I don't want her to be stuck in the past. I want her to develop a program that she has been coming up through, right? And she has the experience of not only being a volunteer, she was then an RBT, then she was a BCBA. She's gone through the whole journey, and now she has the opportunity to help and design a program that might be a little bit more what she think would be the best for the patients.
Well, I like that too. Letting her sort of apply her own influence in it.
And BCBAs, right? How do we advance this from the rules and being told what to do into, hey, this is yours. What's the best for the patients? And operationally, my job is to support what she feels is best for the patients.
Okay. And I know you were checking statistics beforehand because you knew I would ask a question about it. What is the kind of the numbers?
The driving force behind all of this is from 2000 to 2021. It went from 1 in 150 kids diagnosed to 1 in 44.
1 in 150 to 1 in 44. Okay, so I won't.
It's like over 150% increase.
Yeah. And is there and again, this is speculation, and you may not want to go down
That's not my numbers. That's pulled from.
Well, but I meant more of the speculation as to why there's been such a dramatic increase.
I mean, and again, it's a sensitive. It can be a sensitive subject,
course,
right?
Yeah.
Is it more testing? Is it more? Are there more available care? I think that has to play. Goes into it a lot. But I think sometimes it's just push one to the side, and now it's just not getting pushed to the side anymore. In the state-funded programs, right?
Okay.
So these states continue to come on board, and one reason this is happening here in Texas now is this is the first year that Medicaid is supporting this type of service in the state of Texas, right? Prior, it wasn't supported by the state of Texas, and they've been working hard to get this program out. They've been pulling in reserves. They've been saving to do it because it can be a large cost. Again, that's 2% of kids in the United States are diagnosed with autism.
That's wild, man. That's
1 in 44. It's
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Right, and again, the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. So we might not have really. there's a lot of people that have fallen through the cracks too, right? So that kiddo that's 13 years old that moved here from somewhere else that is transitioning can get services if they look for it somewhere or if they qualify for it. Unfortunately, you do have to have a payer to match kind of the services or cash, and we want to help the underfunded. So I don't know if the rates were great, and actually probably not the best from the state, but it's something that we believe with a very thin model at the top, we can support the underserved.
Well, and that what it all comes back to is, I mean, ultimately it's serving the patient, serving
it's helping
the person,
kids.
helping kids. I mean, it's like a lot of times in the healthcare industry, and I'm in this industry, what gets lost is the actual person being impacted by the changes we make.
100%.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a community that can't really speak for themselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
So if the parents, like, it's not in their, hey, I just don't have time to do this. Well, we can come to your home. We got to think, Medicaid families, they got to go to work.
Yeah.
And if they're working hourly jobs and everything else, like, where does this happen? Well, we can step in and help to a certain extent to at least
kind of meet them where they are, right? Or more where they need you to be.
That would help. I mean, that would help me and my family at times. It would help yours.
Yeah, yeah.
You create a safe environment, but the opportunity to help the people that can't help themselves, I think, really drives this. And in my past life, we had 7 different business lines with Aviana. Like we did launch an ABA program in San Antonio when I was there in like 2014. But then the payers were doing a lot of weird stuff. It wasn't supported. The payers changed some rules and stuff, and it really wasn't a good program to be at the time. But it's gotten more supportive as the years have gone on.
Well, that's good to hear. And that's always the dynamic within our industry, right? Is like, what actually will be covered? What will the insurance approve? But
there's a reality to it.
There's a reality to the financial component, which
Correct.
I don't want to dismiss, because it's true. Like, the money has to come from somewhere. But it also, you have to continue to go, well, the counterpoint to that is there's individuals, there's children, there's families, there's people impacted by restrictions that might be placed on this. And so there's always got to be a balance struck. It's always a compromise that has to be struck. But can you tell me a little bit, Derek, about the actual journey as an entrepreneur, like not just specific within Belay On, but what was it like when you go, well, I'm going to take this leap out into the unknown now and start a business? Tell me the psychology of this, obviously talking over with Katie, your wife, about it. Like, just talk to me about some of the things that were going on when you did that. This podcast is sponsored by PlanSight. PlanSight is a technology for employee benefits brokers to more efficiently manage their RFP process for any group size, all funding types, and over 20 benefit lines and point solutions. PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP technology on the market today. Let's modernize your RFP process together. Check us out at plansight.com.
Yeah, so, I mean, we had some changes, right, and some really good roles with healthcare, right, and things have been pretty good, but I started another company, iMedics, and I didn't start it, I started working with them. COVID, bad problems with COVID and ransomware and just issues that collapse things down, and you have to, you know what I mean? I haven't been fired and removed from a job yet. They don't exist. Your position no longer exists, right?
Yeah.
And then I started another one, and it might not have been the best, but I was with Allergy Health. I was director of operations, scaling allergy practices. Great gig and all. We went from 6 locations to 62 in 8 months.
Wow.
Not sure I really eye to eye with leadership. We did a great job, and honestly, it was an appropriate time where I bridged the gap for them to get where they needed to get, and it was a great opportunity for us to move on into this.
Okay.
And where Belay On came from is I've always had this internal motivation. My dad was an entrepreneur. One of my dads was. He was an entrepreneur, had his own businesses and ice cream store for years, came up in a small business. I was like, I think we can do something here with the Medicaid changes and just kind of what I went through in the past. Our house had some value in it. We pulled the money out, burned the boats, and we started this company because it was the right times, right? So I don't think a few years ago I had the knowledge, right? Aviana, Allerv, iMedics, all of these different things coming together gave me this book of knowledge that helped me get ready for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Had I not done those, I don't think I would have. I wasn't ready because I could have done this a few years ago and chose not to. The payer source coming on board, right? So we took the opportunity to have a very supportive wife. And to be honest, this gives us the ability to be at home a little bit more as a family. I traveled for the first 6 years
Yeah,
of my
so I
kid's
remember when
life.
we first met, you were on the road all the time.
4 days a week gone, just to be told like your job doesn't
in
exist.
Alabama or something or where I forgot. Yeah, that was and I was like, wow, that's got to be hard to sustain for everybody, right? You yourself, your wife, your kids.
And to have that type of wife at home holding it down and the way she cares for the children, it's priceless.
Right.
Her support is really what set this over the edge. Like
what happened? Yeah, so talk to me through like that conversation over the dinner table, or maybe when the kids are in bed over a glass of wine, like, hey Katie, I think I'm going to do this, right? So talk to me about like how that all kind of goes down.
I think what it was is like she just, she's like, I think you can do it better. I think it was as simple as that. Man. Like I don't know if everybody listens to you, and I think you can. I think people like working for you, and I think you can do this better. I believe in you. Cool. And she just goes. I mean, we did financially. We're funding this ourselves. Like, we'd love to have more investors, have a few, but like we're going on our own, and we pulled the money out of our house, right? Nobody says do that stuff, but we had such a good timing. We refinanced in January and still got like a 3.3.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everything's solid there,
right? So
everything sort of was putting itself in motion to support this.
It's like being a running back in the NFL. You got to wait for the hole sometimes, then you go. Well, the hole opened up finally. And years before, I didn't see the hole opened up. And this time we saw it and we went, and honestly, it's been a great journey. The bank account is, I'd like to have more revenue coming in and stuff, but like meeting the people and designing the logos and then building, from scratch all of this with friends that I've knew over the years. A gal I went to college with does our marketing, right? And having somebody respond to our job posting, look at what we have, look at what our goals are, our mission is, the name, and say, I want to join that.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's such a compliment. And really, that was what I was really passionate about in the beginning, is getting this foundation laid, starting the process of the insurance and getting a network and stuff, to make the journey a reality with learning what I've been through. And timing.
I think sometimes, like you look at the today's world of online and influencers, and everybody's a 22-year-old entrepreneur like taking a picture in front of his Lamborghini he probably rented for the photo shoot, But it's like there's this misnomer that if you don't start your life out as an entrepreneur, you'll never be an entrepreneur. A lot of the people that I've actually interviewed here had a 15, 20, 25-year career before they ever went out on their own, because they were collecting experiences. They were understanding how the system works. They were kind of identifying the problem. They're also probably figuring themselves out. I'm going through this a little bit myself. You're like understanding who you are and what you actually want out of life and what you value, whether it's money or time or time with your family. Like, I think it's really refreshing to hear that you don't have to be some 18-year-old kid that came up with an app in your basement and got rich. Like, there's a lot of paths to entrepreneurship, and sometimes you just take some time to build an experience and wisdom before you go do that.
You don't just end up somewhere, right? Yeah. Like, and a lot of it, we're growing people into things, and when they start teaching entrepreneurship in college, it's a class now. It's no longer. Are you really an entrepreneur anymore?
Yeah.
Or are you in school?
To become an entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah.
And the real entrepreneurs are sitting behind the camera over here. These guys that are grinding, right?
Yeah.
Like they carried all their bags in today. They stepped out of college. They took some risks.
Shout out to Weston and Nathaniel. Yeah.
I mean, just think about it, right? They're not backed by huge
well, that's fun too, but
entities.
I mean, it's really like there's no right path is kind of what I
there
was.
Is no
there
path.
There is no path. The path is, I think I can do this and I'm going to go do it. And then you almost, I've heard the term build a plane while you're flying it, right? Like while it's in the air.
Yeah, but you're eating off the dollar menu. You're sleeping in your car. Like, there's some sacrifices that go into it that don't sound as cool as the pictures. Like, I would question, the bigger the party, the bigger the lie.
Yeah, that's right.
You ever heard that before?
I don't think I actually have heard that, as a matter of fact, but it makes sense what you're saying. But talk to me about some of the learning curve, man. I mean, it's not just taking the step and now I'm building a business, right? There's a lot of just behind the scenes.
I was almost late to this, arguing over insurances this morning, because one of the payers is pretending like they didn't get all their contracts and stuff in place, and it's fighting a different battle. But it's like, I know how to do this now. I got into real estate years ago because I was like, I wanted to know the process of buying a home. Had some success with that. Sold like $4 million in a year. It was fun and all and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I just need more capital and I could do more. Yeah. I didn't like being in the middle again. again, back to this, in healthcare, you need to follow the rules of your leadership at times, right?
Sure.
I might not have agreed with what they did. We followed the rules, we played the game, and everybody's good. We helped a lot of people, but I'm not there anymore, right? So sometimes the rules are just all over the place, and when you get the opportunity and the hole opens up to make your own choices, you'll find yourself making the same choice as the other car. You know what I mean? Or not. It's your chance. The thing is finding those people who you do it with. My chief marketing officer went to college with me. The second time I went to college after playing minor league baseball, started her own business here, and then she joined, right? It's awesome. You know, Lissa joined on her own. Finding people that have the like-minded journey that also want to hold the rope themselves, you know, Belay On, where they're owning their things. And a big comment to me is like, you're going to trust, you're just going to trust and not micromanage me through this? Yes, I am.
Yeah, yeah. Because that's, I mean, you look back to it and you start thinking about, well, what are the things that I didn't like if and when I was working for somebody else? Or some of the hierarchy, the structure, the order, the bureaucracy, all those things, right? You start thinking about, well, if I didn't like this, if I'm going to now create a company in my own vision, how would I want a person working for or with me to feel about working with me?
I mean, think about it. I'm working with master's levels BCBAs. So they're almost like this is a psychology world. They're very smart, intelligent people that are reading everything that's going all the time. And if you try and sell them a bad book of stuff, they see it,
sniff it out,
they sniff it out, they understand it, and they're pretty smart people, right? And the more that we're self-educated, right? The education, you just Google everything. I mean, TikTok is teaching people all kinds of stuff. I don't have it, I'm whatever, but they're sharing information where I'm like, ugh. Yeah. Like it's.
Well, I was thinking about that last night. I don't know why I got on this thought, but it was like, I don't have a tuxedo. What if I ever got like invited to a place where I needed like a tuxedo? But then I go, oh, I don't know how to tie a bow tie. And I'm like, oh, I'll just watch a YouTube video if I ever have to do that, right? So to your point, literally, I mean, like everything you could ever possibly want to know is kind of out there if you one Google search or YouTube search away.
So really giving somebody the ability, when they've proven that they're at the right point, right part, right? It's their timing, right? And their track record spells that. And then giving them the ability to create the self-inflicted wound, they respond to that, right? It's a point-and-click generation. Everything you want, go online, you find it. They can find everything. So if you take that from them and say you do what I say when I say it, it no longer works. Yeah. In my personal opinion.
Well, and there's no growth, right? Like you said, like the self-inflicted wound. But hey, what if I made a little mistake? Wasn't that big deal? Now I learned from it.
I'm doing my own. I do them every day. I'm like, I could have done that better. Like every day I learn that I could have done something better with this a few months ago or days ago.
But the key is to actually learn from that and do it better the next time.
Self-inflicted wound with support, right? Now I just don't have as much support. And really, it's just a timing on dollars.
Yeah. Well, so let's zoom back out, right? Like we got a little granular. Let's zoom back out the big picture of what do you envision over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, your influence on this space? Like what do you want Belay On to be?
Honestly, my influence really is a place for therapists to do what they want to do, right? Find a place where they can make the money they need to make, understand why they can't make $1 billion because just the industry, math, reimbursement, be a little bit more transparent. But really, I don't want to be the spotlight of that. Like,
well, I mean, even just Belay On as a company, or maybe where you guys fit within the bigger picture of this behavioral therapy space, the autism space, is like, you know, what do you think your stamp is of what you did differently, or how you kind of put your own spin on it?
Really, it's given the therapist the ability to kind of get involved where they weren't before. You're pushed to the side, say, do what we say, instead of, hey, get involved. We can hire 3 more operator people, but we can't pay you what you want to make. Do you want to take on some roles? Do you want to take on some responsibilities? Can you handle this yourself? Okay. What can you guys do to help be involved here so you get what you want out of it? And I think it's been the reverse through years where it's like, hey, do it. We paid you to do this. It'll stand over there.
Yeah.
And you're not getting all that you can out of these master's level clinical positions that are some really, really smart people.
I'm sure there's brilliant people, man. And then I think even just this notion, right, like there's constraints within the way that this payment model works. And I even brainstormed with you one day about whether or not there could be a cash-based version of a payment model for this in the future. But what I think I'm getting on in the subtext underneath that is the quality of life for the people providing the therapy and also the patients themselves. Like, can you provide an environment where both people leave that situation and go, this was the best possible experience we could have had?
We're on a mission to partner with the most innovative companies in America to fix health benefits, one plan at a time. NavMD has created a blueprint that delivers world-class benefits to 155 million Americans. Better benefits starts with data intelligence. Our platform is empowering the next generation of advisors to zero in on opportunities to optimize the plan, build the right team, implement proven strategies and solutions. Join us on our journey to revolutionize health benefits. Let NavMD put you a step ahead.
I believe so, and that's like winning a championship. And
everything has to come together.
It has to come together, right?
Yeah.
I think good managers, you get your team to 500. Good players, they win the championship. So what I'm really saying is we build a foundation, and we get good clinicians, we get good people, we get a good supporting cast that says, I want to do some things and have some ideas, and creating that cultivating those type of personalities who say, like, oh, you mean I can make that decision? Yeah.
Yeah.
That
giving
it's got to
people
come
sort
from
of
them.
autonomy and
Yeah. I mean, in all reality, what I also like to see is I'd like to see the spectrum for the very obvious, right? And then what about the ones falling through the cracks, right? What about the kid that's like, I can go outside and I want to do play. Like, I see a lot of these different centers that they're building, right? And it's these huge 20,000 square foot centers and stuff. I want a smaller center with some backyard space. What about outside? What are we going to do functionally? How do we change the dynamic? How many potties are they training on, right? There's how many types of toilets to flush? Like multiple, right? There's buttons on top, on the side, and everything else. Now put yourself in a scenario, you're an 8-year-old kid.
Okay.
You're kind of compromised and stuff. You go into a bathroom. It's got one of the pushes on tops. Have we taught those kiddos how to succeed in that scenario? Or is he going to walk out, or she, with poop all over them because they couldn't figure out the toilet? So finding little things where it's like they can train on 3 different toilets.
Yeah, that's it. That's stuff I wouldn't even begin to think about.
I mean, in the smallest aspect of it, you're working through scenarios like that. But for somebody else, it might be, I struggle with the rope swing. I don't know. Can we get a rope swing? Is that safe? This is where I need clinicians and rules to pull
tell
me in.
Yes, Derek. No, Derek.
Because I want to be able to put, climbing things on the wall so that the kiddo that loves climbing can go up the wall, but that might not be safe. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I want to go as far as we can, but it also I need good people to rein.
Yeah, absolutely.
Us in.
I mean, that's one of the things that I've heard is a very commonality amongst lots of entrepreneurs is ultimately they said their businesses really started to thrive as they were just hiring people that were better even than them.
Yeah, if I'm the smartest person on this team, and I keep coaching them. I'm like, guys, stop me.
Yeah.
If I'm going too far or whatever, just stop me and say we need to get back on track. And they're starting to do it, but be very upfront about how we should work in the dynamic of strength. And
I know you probably got a sideline.
And I gave away true equity.
Yeah.
I didn't do like a phantom stock thing, whatever. I said, if you're part of this, let's make this simple.
Okay.
You work here, you get this % of this.
Yep.
Like, not the games that I've seen at the corporate thing where it disappears at the end, or you thought you were getting this and it turns into this. No.
Yeah, let's just make it. Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't want to mislead people and you want to attract the right people as well that are committed to the cause. But so if you've got to probably have a sight line, right? Because you don't just build a business for next week. You build a business for the next 5 to 10 years. So how do you perceive this space to continue to evolve kind of broadly, the autism space or the therapy space? Like, what do you think the evolution of care might look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
Right. I can't speak on that. If we had our clinician here, she could maybe hit on that.
We'll get Liz, right? We'll get Liz to come
Lissa,
around.
yeah.
Lissa, excuse me, around for round 2.
If I could say I would like to have one thing, it's just whether it's that spectrum or all the behaviors, is to be able to provide a setting, a safe, comfortable setting that's non-clinical, hence the name Belay On, and we have mountains on it. Mm-hmm. Is it a climbing place? Is it whatever? That doesn't feel like you've been diagnosed with X and come to this. This is not a clinic treatment center. This is a facility to understand. Instead of you are this and you get this, this is an open environment where every different level can get something out of it. Yeah. If anything, it's kids like me, honestly, being able to go there and getting something out. I'd like the payers to start, I think, ADHD, Down syndrome. I even think dementia and Alzheimer's would benefit for these type of treatments.
Well, and that's a whole different, paths we
Well,
could go to.
watching my dad decline on that, it was sad.
Yeah.
It's sad watching that. And when people would go to the home, his therapist and his PTs and what he could have and the time they spent there, the more that they were there, the better his brain was.
Yeah.
The more he got left on his own, the more he
kind of devolved, I guess you will.
I don't know. It's almost like he ate himself up.
Man.
But then he'd get around people and it was great, right? So nobody likes to talk about this giant population of 73-year-old plus people that we want to push to the side and put them in these
homes,
Medicare homes and stuff, and they don't even want the people in these homes. The whole process of going through that was sad. But if we could take some time with those type of diagnoses, I think those are 3 diagnoses from ADHD to the Down syndrome into like the dementia, Alzheimer's. I think that I would like to see more of that happening.
More connectivity between all of those things. Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
But that's just me way outside the box, right? I mean,
well, that's what your job as an entrepreneur is to think outside the box. I mean, and that's not just a cliche. Like literally that's what you're
or I might be homeless in a year.
Yeah. Well,
staying with you.
I got an extra bedroom, dude, if you need it. I don't know. We can get you all in there, Bob. Well, so closing thoughts, man. I really appreciate Derek. We probably talked 45 minutes plus, and thanks for sharing this. And generally, thank you for telling your story, right? Because I'm you and I have talked together about entrepreneurship at life, and I'm almost picking your brain, Derek, tell me about this. Sure. It's exciting to hear, and it's exciting to see your actual evolution from an idea to going to doing it. And so I appreciate you and appreciate you telling your story on the podcast. But
I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, no, we continue to get to know each other at deeper and deeper levels, man. But so help me wrap this up. Closing thoughts for the folks that are listening still, and not still, but a lot of people will tune in and they'll literally go 100%. I have this weird audience, and I appreciate them that will literally listen from start to finish on every episode. But the folks that you want to share your closing thoughts and wrap it up, what would you like them to hear?
If this whole thing doesn't work, it's been the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think if you do something, you do it with purpose. In that whole thing of do what you're passionate about. I mean, honestly, I'm passionate about snowboarding.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? I think the purpose driven is this is a segment where I've educated myself to the point that the math works on this. And when you get to statistics, the model matches what's out there in reimbursement. It matches the demand for the patients, right? And when there's a demand, and I have a child myself, I want to see the best for them. And I've kind of see this segment miss. But as an entrepreneur, fail. Yeah. Fail every day. You know what I mean? Because you'll learn something from it, and just understand you're not defined by your failure, and you're not defined by your diagnosis. Those 2 things. The rest of it, I mean, what I wanted to be was a shortstop for the Yankees. Yeah. And I wasn't, right? And I'm still here. I wanted to be a center midfielder for FC Dallas, and that didn't quite work. Well, people ask me what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What do you think? I'm I want to be a shortstop for the Yankees. And I'm not going to be that. Yeah. That's done. Well, but you say, people, you weighing in what you said about pursue your passion. Sometimes your passion can be what other people are passionate about, and you get to serve them. Or sometimes your passion your passion might be snowboarding now. Well, if the math doesn't add up in passion, then you need to find a hobby to feed your passion. Exactly. So, I mean, if this calls a hobby or whatever, but hey, just do what you're passionate about. It's not going to feed your kids all the time. True. And that is the gamble in this is I'm really passionate about dog photography. Well, there might be a limit to, right, what you can support, or it might be billions, right? Yeah. There's cats everywhere. I mean, there's animals everywhere. Yeah. But I'm passionate about people. Yeah. I'm passionate about coaching. I'm passionate about watching people go through their process. It's exciting to watch our clinician. It's exciting to watch her take the risk on joining this thing with you, with us, right? And it's vulnerable, right? Yeah. Do you like the logo? What do you think of the logo? What do you think of the logo? I mean, I don't know. It's all vulnerable to me, but at the same time, it's out there. And sometimes you just got to get the name out there, and you got to get the logo out there. Well, then you make it better. It's the first step, dude. I mean, and that's the most crucial step, and that's not BS. It really is. So I appreciate you again, man. I genuinely wish you best of luck, and of course, we'll see each other at soccer practice on Thursday or Saturday or whatever our next game is. But man, really, really grateful to have this conversation, man. Yeah, we'll do it thanks again. For having me, man. We'll do a 3-year down the road. We'll do it again and then see where we are at that point. Yeah, you never know. All right, man. Take care. Thanks, bud. Yeah. True Captive believes in healthcare that is personal and insurance that isn't complicated. Check them out at truecaptive.com.